As a ratepayer, one of the things that really sticks in the throat is that if, as an example, a ratepayer is prosecuted by their local government, then that ratepayer is paying for their own prosecution. So it's a double whammy. Not only do you have to pay for the prosecution, you also have to pay for the defence.
Hi, Gavin. Welcome to Perth Dialogues.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing the story of Melville Shadow Council.
It is a very interesting topic when I came when I read about it and saw it. Actually, I saw about you in the Fremantle Herald. They had a news item on this and I thought it's very interesting. And so I thought many people, especially locals, but also the migrants who come to Australia, would be interested to see how the local governments work and how they can contribute, how they can participate and things like that. So thank you for giving your time again.
Yeah, local government. It's an extremely broad and quite difficult subject. The state has been discussing local government from somewhere about 1870, I think, is some of the earliest discussions, and the Royal Commission in 1949 is probably close to the best that's happened in defining what local government's role is. And predominantly they talk about the closeness of the people, the community, to the local government and managing the local area. The issue that we have these days, and it includes the latest reforms, is that there is an increasing wedge between the community and their local government. For instance, the purpose of the 1995 Local Government Act, which we're working under now, is to increase the engagement with the community, with the members of the public in local government affairs and decisions. Yet if you look at the council minutes and particularly the recordings online, you'll see that there is an increasing distance between the community and members of the community and the decisions that are made in council. A particularly poor relationship is increasingly being developed between council and the executive management of local governments, which expands this even further and creates greater difficulties of the community with their governance and engagement in the local government. Where do we go from here? The purpose of the Shadow Council, it's not a new concept. It's been around for pretty much as long as we've had government in Australia. So we have both a shadow cabinet in federal government as well as state government. The purpose of the Shadow Council is to try and bridge that gap between the alternate views in the community and the views that the government in power is pursuing. So very much the same theme. Melville's Shadow Council is looking to bring to the council those alternate views of the community within the City of Melville. And of course, if we talk about membership of the Shadow Council, then we're talking about an open membership of anyone who is an electoral resident in the City of Melville. I've had a couple of questions from councillors already as to who are the members. And the response is very much anybody who wishes to have a voice and is a elector or resident in the City of Melville. These are the people who are missing out on their voice to council.
You have put the Shadow Council is not there in the local governments as it stands. So obviously you have put in a lot of time and energy into setting this up voluntarily, no pay, no access to the local government records and documentation. How does your day-to-day life looks like when you are getting into this? And how do you manage this enormous task? Where do you start?
Excellent question. The Really, the only place to start is the views and experiences of the residents and ratepayers. I've had bad experiences with the local government, and that's a failure to be able to resolve those bad experiences has driven me to work in this area, and yes, it's extremely stressful. The local government from both the council and the executive side of things are not respectful, and they tend to spend, or the evidence suggests that they spend as much, if not more, of their time in denigrating members of the public as they do in making decisions. The City of Melville is not a lonely or isolated council or local government. You've got the same problems that are affecting the city of Perth now, affect Melville. The issue, again, is a fundamental issue of the architecture of the legislation. The architecture, the structure does not benefit the community. If you look at the oversight organisations, we've got the Ombudsman, the State Administrative Tribunal, the Department of Local Government, now the Local Government Inspector. None of those are focused on benefiting the community. The Ombudsman, for example, has a clear and explicit conflict of interest by providing policy to the local governments to exclude community members. The Standards Advisory Tribunal has constant complaints of being biased and showing very little interest in the public. There is no funded government agency for the benefit of community. Even WALGA, the West Australian Local Government Association, is an association paid for through local government to benefit the local government, the employees, particularly in local government. And it does not look at the purpose of local government and does not benefit the community.
You shared about all the infrastructure and organizations that are there around local government and the problems that there are in almost every local government. What pushed you to go and say, that's enough, and I'm going to start something?
The short answer is time. Being unable it's now going on to around 12 years, to be able to just simply sit down and mediate or discuss issues that have arisen and find suitable resolutions to them. Now, as time goes by, I get more and more contact from other people with the same issue. So why is it taking 10, 12, 14 and longer years for the city to manage its failures? And again, if you're looking at business management, the people who are most important to a business are those who have found the faults and are able to then bring benefit through resolution of those faults. If you focus as a business only on that which is already seen as a success, then you cannot improve, if that makes sense.
So when the Shadow Council came up, the City of Melville mayor said that there are already established measures for transparency and community engagement. There's people can come and share their views in the meetings. When you heard that, what went through your mind?
That's not something that I would put on public record. In short, although the mechanisms are there, a lot of those mechanisms are weaponised by both the council and the administration for the purpose of shutting down alternative views. The council does have a role in benefiting the community, but if it's not going to address the alternative views, then it's not addressing the community. Where do you go to with that? If you look at the cultural issue, there is a forever standing issue with discrimination against the Indigenous people of this country. It's still going on, yet we talk about respect and welcome to country and so on, and yet the minute the camera is off or the door is closed, all that is thrown out the window. You can see that in every meeting. If you look at the governance rules and regulations that are published in the council minutes, many of them show a failure to comply with the legislation, and yet no contrary view is accepted. You raise and again, if we go back to the issue of membership of the Shadow Council, the Shadow Council moves on from residents and ratepayers associations. Residents and ratepayers in those associations, in any of the local governments that have them, you will see that those residents or ratepayers who point out the issues and the faults are targeted. Measure that is quite controversial is what is the impact of the decisions and actions of local governments on suicide rates. I'm sure there is some there. My own personal experience and listening to other people, there is a lot of health impacts from local government caused by local government that are not addressed. And these are things that none of the oversight agencies are even prepared to discuss or look at.
Right. So as a ratepayer, how do you feel when you fund everything what a local government does? Not just directly, but also the other organizations, Polga and things like that. How does it feel that when you do fund everything, but your voice is never counted in their deliberations?
Yeah, as a ratepayer, one of the things that really sticks in the throat is that if, as an example, a ratepayer is prosecuted by their local government, then that ratepayer is paying for their own prosecution. So it's a double whammy. Not only do you have to pay for the prosecution, you also have to pay for the defence, and it's not unusual for those prosecutions to be vexatious or the use of weaponised rules and regulations to shut down people who are not of the same voice as those in my own experience. And I'm quite happy to put on the record that I've been prosecuted. I've been prosecuted for removing weeds from a park and planting native plants in their place. So, why should I have to pay the expenses of the local government for their raising that prosecution and my having to defend it? And what benefit does it give to the local government? None at all. If you take that a step further, in the local government review of the City of Melville back in 2018, 2019, the city put a proposal to or a review to the ministerial inquiry that they were spending $180,000 a year approximately because of complaints, and in short, that would be spending that kind of money for failing to resolve those issues. The City of Melville is falsely reporting to their financial records by failing to address the $180,000 a year or around that figure that they are using to prevent the resolution of disputation. So when you're talking about resolving disputation, costs would be in the hundreds or low thousands. Yet we have an organisation that is staunchly protecting their ability to maintain disputation. It's crazy. These are the things that ratepayers are paying for. Why? Wasting ratepayer funds.
So for anyone who has known only about shadow councils in federal and state level, what is shadow council in local government in simplest terms?
In simplest terms, it's a vehicle for residents and ratepayers to raise their issues with the local government. Yes, there are methods in place for people to ask questions at council, but while there are those avenues, there is no avenue for the ratepayer to be assured of an honest or accurate response. I would be surprised if there
in any of the council minutes that are on public record for the last, say, 12 months, that one could not find a false or misleading report to public questions. Freedom of information is another issue. We have the city now currently making up its own rules about access to the city's information. In my own experience, not so long ago, I put in a request for personal information, and despite the legislation requiring that information to be provided without charge, the city has charged. And they are able to do that on the basis that the Oversight, the Office of Information, is so overloaded that they cannot manage the number of complaints that they currently have. So there's another example of the city failing to comply with legislation.
So your website on the Melville Shadow Council says that the Shadow Council is a council in waiting. So what does that mean?
If you look at the system we have, a person who wants to stand for council has something like a month or 6 weeks to go around and lobby all their constituents, which is not a democratic opportunity. The councillors that are sitting councillors have had 4 years to do that same task. The idea of councillor in waiting in the Shadow Council is to enable any elector who wishes to stand in the future can publish their thoughts and their exercises on the Shadow Council website, so that they can have a chance at balancing some of that currently undemocratic bias.
Right. So you launched on 1st April this year. How did the launch go? Who showed up? How was the energy? Were people surprised to see that there is a launch or there is a Shadow Council?
When we talk about a launch, it wasn't an official function. It was simply switching on. The date of 1st of April was taken partly in jest, because local government is widely seen as very much a political joke. It is not well managed. It is highly biased. I better not go further without denigrating too many people.
So your Shadow Council is entirely volunteer run and unfunded. So
Correct.
How do you keep the people motivated and the energy going and them contributing money or resources, because you don't have staff, you don't have authority, you don't have access to documents? How do you keep going?
I'll have to take you back one step there. Yeah, at the moment, it's a very, very small number of people who are contributing to the Shadow Council as it is. It has only been now, 3 or 4 months that it's been up and operating. Very, very young. So we've got a long way to go. There is a 5-year plan to get established. So we are establishing in this following 5 years. All those answers will be developed over that time. And it's very much that it is the thoughts, the energies, and the inclusion, the engagement of the residents and ratepayers of Melville who will drive that direction. I have a good idea at the moment of where I'd like to see it go, but anything can change in the next 4.5 years. It depends on where the residents and ratepayers would like it to go. There is already some interest in other areas for similar Shadow Council. There has been a bit of state interest through the media, and we'll see where that goes. It would be nice to see that sometime in the future a reform to the local government legislation would include a mandatory requirement for a alternative or shadow council to address the chasm between the local government and their community.
You said that there are only a few number of people behind the Shadow Council who get together and start scrutinizing what the City of Melville is doing. How does that scrutiny looks like? How do you meet? How do you discuss? What's the process?
There is no set process. The process will evolve, and it will evolve very much with what type of engagement is sought by the members. We have had coffee sessions, meeting at a coffee house. We have had online discussions, telephone discussions. We work very closely with the Melville Residents and Ratepayers Association and some resident and ratepayers associations from other jurisdictions, other local governments. The more we can get and more we can encourage that discussion, the better and broader the effects of the Shadow Council will be.
Right. So one of the things I saw that you did was to examine the appointment of a former state regulator to a senior role at the city. What were you trying to highlight?
The local government, if you go back to the establishment of, or the constitutional establishment, it calls for a system of local government. We don't have a system of local government. So in that regard, it doesn't comply with the constitutional requirement. What we do have is an industry of local government. Now, it's a very closed industry. So you have across the senior executive there a closed shop, and it's often referred to as a revolving door. So whether it be a senior member of the Department of Local Government, the Inspector's Office, the WALGA, and certainly associated with the Ombudsman and the SAT as well. These people revolve within that area. So you cannot identify an independence between any of these organisations. There is even evidence that the city is closely aligned with the local police in the Melville area and use those police to promote the objectives of the senior staff, not of the legislation. That's a controversial area. It's probably not something that we should go into just at the moment, but it is there on the table. If you've got, going back to your question, your statement, the concept of this revolving door of senior or controlling figures all working together, there is little hope for a democratic situation. And again, if you look at the City of Melville, you'll see that the council is very much under the control of the executive. It is not an independent council in any way, shape or form. Simply that the council makes their decision in some ways compliant with the legislation. There again, it is not fully compliant. If you look at the records, the council is required to make their decisions based on the merits of the arguments, and you will not find anywhere in the records any reference to a merit of an argument that the council has made a decision on. A good example is the establishment of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. The legislation states that no employee shall be a member of that committee. The document put to the council for their decisions on establishing the City of Melville ARIC committee has clearly and explicitly mentioned in there that the CEO is a member of that committee. That is a clear audit risk in that the audit committee is now auditing the CEO while the CEO is a member of that committee. The Audit and Risk Committee has exclusively councillors as its main membership. This is not including the chair and the vice chair, who by statute are required to be neither elected nor employed members. However, there is no stopping those two positions being touted and appointed on the basis of relationships with the city. The councillors, again, being the only members of an audit committee, are responsible then for auditing their own decisions, a conflict risk.
Right. Beyond that, your Shadow Council website has got a list of documents or, things called council failures. Staff using or doing the role of elected councillors, like you just shared. Annual reports have no real community value, things like that. Let us know which one of these should people go first and try to understand them so that they can benefit.
There's several lists there of failures, and now these are failures to comply with either legislation or the council's own policies or other rules that are associated with local governments. The first one that needs to be dealt with is the one that affects the person who's reading it. You know, how do you address all the list? We have over 50 failures. In fact, I would suspect that at the moment it's getting probably closer to 70 or 80 failures, and it's growing each month. A lot of them are not yet published online, and we do intend to publish those as time goes by. So there is no identifiable first and there is no identifiable last. Everything contributes to a systematic failure to comply with legislation, a systematic benefiting of the elected and employed members in the local government. This is when a point like that is first raised, the general conception is that we're talking about corruption. Now, with the legislation, corruption has a number of different meanings. The legislated corruption is something that is specifically identifiable for providing a financial benefit to the people engaging in it. But if you look at the general meaning of corruption, we are talking about corruption of the legislation. We are talking about corruption of the rules, such as the policies, to provide benefits that don't necessarily provide financial benefit to the people either engaged in them or receiving benefit from it.
The Shadow Council has said that the city's minutes and reports sound inclusive and accountable, but they protect only the city administration. It's not helping the community. Can you give some examples from the City of Melville?
If you look at volunteers, is a good one. The volunteers is a strategic item. Whether or not the city uses volunteers, how they use volunteers, and for what purpose they use volunteers is all part of the strategy for benefiting the community itself. The council does not have a policy for managing or using volunteers. The administrators have deemed, without discussion, without authority, and without any consideration of the outcomes, they've deemed that volunteers are employees and therefore come under the Section 5.41 requirement for the CEO to manage day-to-day business. There couldn't be a greater perversion of that rule when we're looking at volunteers. So we have that function there that is managed without the council authority. It's managed in contradiction to the published respect that the city has on its website for volunteers. It does not respect the health and well-being of the volunteers.
You also said earlier that the city's annual report is publicly available, but it's got no meaningful information to the ratepayers. So if a resident picks it up today, what should they be looking, what they can't find it? They're expecting it, but they won't find it in the report.
Okay, again, volunteers is one. If you look at the principal documents that are supposed to be the management guidelines for the local government, you've got the annual report. It used to be called the annual community report, but as community was seldom engaged in that report, it's been morphed into now a council report. You have the annual financial report and you have the annual business report. All these are separate reports, and if you look across them, you won't see any consistency. You look at the hierarchy of the organisation itself, you will not see across the reports a report from each of the hierarchies. You won't see a report into what the volunteers have done through the year. Sure, there is mention of odd bits and pieces. We have less than 1% of the population recorded as being volunteers. Yet the truth of the matter is that there's probably some 20 to 30% of the community who volunteer in some form or other. So the annual reports are denigrating volunteers to around 20%. Much higher value to the local government than what the local government is giving them credit for. Like I said earlier, the $180,000 a year that the city is spending on maintaining disputation is crazy. It's not there. The disputation itself is not there. There is no measure. There is no reporting of the disputations and what is done to amend them, to repair them. There is no restitutional measurement of or reporting of incidents across, whether they be emergency incidents, weather incidents, not there. From an overall perspective, the management reporting of the organisation is abysmal. A private company would go bankrupt trying to operate under the amount of recording and reporting that is done by local governments. If you want to take that to the next step, there is conflict between legislation. A corporation, private corporation, is required to comply with corporations law. The local government is set up under a separate set of laws. So it is trying to reinvent corporations law where we already have a well-tried and developed corporations regime. It creates a conflict between the two. And it's a conflict that is causing confusion both in local government and in industry. Why are we having these discriminatory systems? A single system, or as close as possible to a single system, is always going to provide greater benefit.
Every council celebrates a lot of new migrants who are becoming citizens across the citizenship ceremonies. So when these new people go to a local council for the first time, planning permits, development applications, or even trying to organize a community facility or use the community facility, what should they know on how the local government actually works versus how it's supposed to work? What's the difference?
Well, let's put it this way. Migrants are a large section of the community these days. And whether we like it or not, we are multicultural in that respect. We do have this sort of bias, prejudice, if you like, that somehow people who are citizens, have gone through a citizenship ceremony, are one class of persons, and people who have not gone through the citizenship ceremony are a different class. I think that's more a reflection of our communities generally than it is something of local government. We are, for want of a better term, we are developing a quite heavily class-oriented society. From a local perspective, it shouldn't matter whether you're a migrant to the country, whether you are a migrant within the country to this local government. The basics of the local government system should be the same for everybody. It should be simple. It should be something that is able to be discussed. It should not be something that is dictated to or upon anyone or any particular group. To dictate is to fail to benefit the community itself.
Right. So on that note, what do you think a genuine, meaningful community engagement looks like from City of Melville or any other local government?
It would have to take a number of different forms. It should be something where, it would be easy for a person to have a cup of coffee with staff in the organisation and discuss the matters that are happening. It should be where there is a free and open engagement in discussions of governance, how the organisation is governed, and whether or not the decisions that have been made or about to be made are legitimate for the benefit of the community. It should be, one of the things I would like to see is that councillors are elected in wards within the City of Melville. We have 6 wards and 2 councillors in each. So why then, once these people are elected, that they no longer represent the area? The argument that is put in council is that a councillor needs to represent the entire local government, and that provides an excuse for councillors not to work for the benefit of their ward. I would like to see an office in each of the wards that is a councillor office. Now, whether it be an office in a library or another public building, it doesn't have to be an expensive standalone office. It doesn't have to be manned 100% of the time. If we've got an office in a library, for example, if the councillors are available to put some time in there, then it gives somewhere that their constituents are able to actually sit down and talk with them. At the moment, it's about either meeting at a coffee shop, meeting at a person's residence, or meeting in the main city building. All of those can be inconvenient at times. Meeting in the city building comes with uncomfortable positions because the person coming in knows that they are being watched and monitored by others. So it can be quite a frightening experience. Even going to a council meeting is quite a frightening experience. If you had that local office, if the councillor was not present, the librarian or whoever else was there could take a message and pass it on. A much more comfortable, much more engaging scenario. These are the kind of things that we should be looking at. We shouldn't be looking at the kind of questions. If you look at the council meeting now, the mandated question time there has developed as it is because there is a limitation on the ability of engagement between the local government and the members of the community. Okay. Even at the last meeting last Tuesday, the mayor is reported to have challenged a person questioning over the potential for denigrating the council or the local government. Okay. With those kind of pressures on the people questioning, how can you legitimately raise concerns of impropriety or improper management of an organisation? It's a means of shutting down criticism, not of good management.
Yes, actually, there is a sense where residents going to the meeting, attending public question time, writing submissions, it seems like it's all performative, but the decisions have already been made. Do you think that's fair conclusion? And if that's so, what is the point of engaging at all in the local government, any of the modes of participation?
The short answer to that is yes, absolutely. If you look at the advice that is provided to council by the administrators, the submissions that are put to the council by residents and ratepayers, whether that's in the form of questions or correspondence or deputations, makes no difference. You will see that the council almost automatically will discard the community's points of view and only consider the report by the executive. And this is the evidence of a council that is managed, not independent.
I was going through your website and it also mentions something like crimes of participation. What do you mean? And if you can give an example of this crimes of participation.
Yeah, crimes of participation. It's an interesting concept, and I have been challenged over this in that using the term could raise the discomfort of the local government and by that discourage engagement. So but the term itself refers to the engagement by numerous members of the public, particularly those who take up a voluntary role. When they've taken up these roles and spoken out, they are targeted, and it is targeted as if their engagement is a crime. Now, whether that is in voicing an opinion about a policy development, whether it is asking questions at the council meetings, whether it is volunteering in the environmental area or any other area, is irrelevant. As soon as a person speaks out about anything that they find is not as it should be, they tend to be targeted as a criminal simply because they participate.
Right. So you or your Melville Shadow Council is focused in the city of Melville, but do you think the issues that you are facing are a systemic problem and they are also there in other local governments, so other residents can also pick up and learn from you and do something similar?
Absolutely. We have close contact with the City of Belmont. Yes, the issues exist there. City of Stirling, yes, the issues are there. Though we don't have close contact with the City of Perth, through media representation, we can see that the issues exist there. There's been a Royal Commission into the City of Wanneroo. Look at the Royal Commission report. The issues exist there. It is a systemic issue. And it is a systemic issue because the legislation and the reforms to legislation have been focused around behaviours, around conduct of people, and have not looked at the structure, the framework of local government, because it has allowed the behaviours and the conducts to take place without having any recourse for repair, resolution, or prevention.
Local governments, like, with these issues that are facing in local governments, and you said there's others, there's a lot of inspections and interference, or not interference. It's more of the state government has got into it and tried to solve it. There's reports, inquiries. Why do you think these reports and checks from the state government are not having the intended effect? What's preventing a real reform in the local government?
The reforms that we've had have been based on reviews and reports that are all introspective, if you like. The main review for the current reforms was done by, the review of the review was conducted by people within the industry who have a vested interest in the industry. So they were looking for evidence to support their existing views, and that's what has caused the reforms that we currently have. If you go back to the ministerial inquiry into the City of Melville in 2017-18, I think it was, and you look at the draft report, you will see that was highly biased, that the principal intent was to shut down community engagement, and they very nearly got through. If you go back to the 1949 Royal Commission, again, they're talking about what's the role of the local government, and that role has been raised by people within the industry, not by the community. So the failure of the government and the various ministers is the failure to engage with the community over it. There was over 3,000 responses to the inquiry into the 1995 local government legislation. Now, of those 3,000, the ones that were used for the reforms were from the industry. The views of the community were set aside. So, and the community are the people who are being governed. So when you don't engage with the people who the rules are applying to, you're not going to get rules that are beneficial. This is well exampled in the work health and safety rules legislation. In that legislation, it states specifically that the workplace rules and regulations for conduct and behaviour must be accepted and developed by those people that they apply to. We step outside that legislation. Local government is applying rules and regulations over the people who they apply to. And of course it's not going to work. Never has, never will.
One of the oft-quoted statistics that I've heard, which shows that people are not satisfied or they are switched off from the local government, is the low participation when the elections come. About 30% only voting happens. How do you think we can bring back people to this third tier of government, which is supposed to be closest to the people?
Simple answer is to reinstate democracy. The participation rates in elections is a very good measure of the respect that is held for the organisation. If people respect an organisation, they'll want to be part of it. You can see by the votes in the local government area that people just do not want to be involved because there is nothing there that is to be respected, nothing that the community can participate in with confidence.
Over the next, say, a year or 2 years, what few changes would you like to see which will show that the Shadow Council is working and it is creating that intended change that you started with?
Two primary things that I would dearly love to see, the first of which would be regular public meetings. And that one is difficult because there is very limited venues in the City of Melville for public meetings of any considerate size. If you're trying to meet with more than 30 or 40 people, it is very, very difficult to find a venue that we can do that in that is convenient to the population. The second item I would dearly love to see, and it'll probably take more than 2 years, is I would like to run an annual convention or conference on local government in the City of Melville. And again, predominantly that is limited by availability of venues. So in a conference, it gives both the professionals and the community the opportunity to speak out in a public venue, have it recorded, and have it show some substance.
For achieving those goals over 2 years, and you've already been working for a long time to set this up, it takes a lot of personal cost. Were there times when you thought, this is asking too much from me and maybe I should just leave it?
Yes, it's not something that is a passing thought. It's something that's frequently comes up. And it is common. And among the people that I talk to, among the other residents and ratepayers, it's very much, why should I even bother trying? Because the corruption is, and they often use terms like corruption, is so institutionalized, and the legislation in some parts supports it, and the lack of independence in oversight prevents anything from being managed to stop that concept of corruption, institutionalized corruption, from being further expanded. Now, what do? I know of some people who have actually sold up and moved out of the district to get away from the issue. Yeah.
But equally, there would have been times when, residents or people from inside the city or even some of the councillors, they would have come and quietly told you that, you are right. Things need to change. Has it happened?
That's a very rare occasion. It's more through strategic silence that message is passed. Yes, I have come across that perception, and it is usually from the people who actually do the work in the city. There is not a great deal of respect for the executive, and I've just got to be very careful in what I say here so that I don't inadvertently identify people who would be impacted because of this point of view. So how do we deal with it?
So if one of the residents of City of Melville comes to you and say, Gavin, I've heard your conversation. This sounds terrible, but I want to make it good. I want to make it better. Where can I start? What's your answer?
There is no one starting point. Where can you start? I would probably have to say that the best starting point is to become engaged. It's not usual for a person to be so short on something to do that they would come up and say, well, I'm looking for something to do. How do I get engaged? How do I start to rectify these problems? The normal is that I've experienced this failure. How do I rectify it? That's the common theme. And the issue there, and goes back to one of the principles of why we're looking at the Shadow Council and not the Residents and Ratepayers Association, is that Residents and Ratepayers Associations have been particularly vocal in resolving single issues. And while that's to their credit, it's exceptionally difficult, and it often ends up with the individual or the issue being undermined and silenced. The idea of the Shadow Council is that we put these issues up as permanent failures or report them permanently as failures. And this is why we're talking about crimes of engagement, why we're talking about lists of legislative failure or policy failure, because these are the systemic issues, these are the foundation issues. Let me give you another example here, just to digress slightly. The council has only just in its last meeting adopted the recommendation by the executive to formulate a policy framework. Now, the council was given, both the council and the executive were given a policy framework back in 2020, 2021. So 6 years on, we now have the executive silently sneaking in to say, we need a policy framework when they already have it. And you can be guaranteed that this policy framework that they put up is not going to be beneficial to the community. Absolutely 100% guaranteed. So there again, is an example of where community members have got engaged and they're being shut down. Okay. Why are we now using ratepayer funds to redevelop something that was developed 6 years ago? Sure, it needs to be reviewed because it's 6 years old. The legislation's changed, so yes, it needs to be reviewed to update the legislation. But we come back now and just simply for supporting the employment of unreasonably paid executives, we come back for another wasted exercise.
If anyone wants to reach out to you for Shadow Council, where can they reach out?
Best is to look up the website, which is melville.shadowcouncil.org. There is a phone number on there. In fact, there should be two phone numbers on there. One is mine, the other is the phone for the organisation. And yeah, welcome to contact me anytime. Otherwise, look through the historic records at the Melville Herald newspaper or Fremantle Herald newspaper. The Herald has always been very good to us in reporting independently and unbiasedly on issues in the city, which unfortunately, if you look back in history, you'll see has cost them in lost advertising. So there again is another example of the local government acting biasedly against people who seek to speak out.
Good. Thanks, Gavin. On that note, thank you for your time and sharing your journey to start this Shadow Council and all the work that you're doing to get the changes that you want and the changes that benefit the ratepayer. So, yeah, thank you for again.
Thank you.